I pull Matthew McConaughey every once a year and sit naked on a beach and play a drum.
Exactly.
I just don't get arrested.
I'm ready for all today. You are the pain.
Welcome everybody to the Sleeper Wire Show. My name is Rob Rose and I will be hosting again as we go into the tight end version of the all-decade team. So what we're doing, guys, is we're building the decade's best Superflex roster, essentially in a PPR format from obviously 2010 through 2019. So far, we've gone through quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tonight we will be doing the tight ends. With me, as always, I have Jason. Jason, say hello.
Gronk smash.
George, say hello.
Hello.
Michael, say hello.
What's happening, everybody? How we doing?
There we go. So I've introduced you to my crew. We are on the journey again. Hopefully, we are not infuriating you with our picks. We have had some contention. We love to see it, guys. Thanks for jumping on the Twitter polls. And we will next week wrap this whole thing up. And while we do that, we will let you know who has won in each of the Twitter polls for the position groups that we go through. So you know who the people have chosen for their entry into our all-decade team. And thanks for playing along, guys. So last week, 3 weeks ago, we did quarterbacks. Jason, let us know who we picked as our quarterbacks for the all-decade Superflex roster.
I was going to make the joke that I forgot him again, and then I actually forgot him again and had to look it up. So it is it was Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Cam Newton, and Tom Brady.
And then 2 weeks ago, we did the running backs, which we had, oh, good Lord, I think I forgot them. So we had, who was that guy that was really good that we had at number one?
Christian McCaffrey.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Christian McCaffrey. George said he would not participate in this, so thank you, George. We had Christian McCaffrey, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, Arian Foster, and Le'Veon Bell. And then we had a Twitter poll out there for the 6. And George, last week we did wide receivers. Recap for us who we chose.
Last week with the wide receivers, we settled on Antonio Brown, number 1, followed by 1A at Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson, Brandon Marshall, and Michael Thomas.
All right. We had some good names out there for the Twitter poll on that, and we'll let you know who won next week. And there will be a Twitter poll accompanying this, guys, with 4 names, and make sure you vote. Mike, stay fly. So this week we're going into tight ends, guys, and one of the things that is pretty obvious is that Gronk smash, number 1. Jason, give me a little bit of a statistical overview of why.
Hey, come to me last.
This man needs help. George?
I'm ready to go. You want me to give you some numbers? I'll give you numbers.
Yeah, I want some numbers, guy. Give me some numbers.
This decade, Gronk was just an absolute beast. Yes, you can have the argument, he was injury prone. 2012, he only played 11 games. 2013, 7 games. 2016, he played in 8. He wasn't always on the field. He's only got 2 seasons where he played all 16 games, and yet he still managed to get 79 touchdowns this decade, which leads all wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, all skill position players with 79 touchdowns. Just absolutely insane. He's got 7,861 yards. When he was on the field, he was a beast. He's got the most receiving yards, both regular season and playoffs, and most receiving touchdowns, regular season and playoffs. Dude was just an absolute monster on the field.
Yeah, he's freaking legit, man. And you knew he was a first-round pick for a long time. He was one of the only viable tight ends for a good portion of those years, and he was worth the draft capital. We definitely have noticed that there is not a lot of points scored by the tight ends. I was trying to find a creative way to say that and blanked. They just don't score as much as the wide receivers and the running backs do, even in PPR format. And Jason, I believe you threw a stat out earlier when we were chatting that only 2 people got over 300 points, PPR points.
Gronk had the biggest season of the decade with 330 and a half. What I was looking up when you went to me first is how many times Gronk finished first in the decade. Gronk finished first 4 times in the decade and second once. So half the decade he was 1 or 2. George kind of mentioned. Go ahead.
I was going to ask real quick, that year where he scored the most points in the decade, was that 2011 by chance?
You're right, George. It is 2011. So
okay.
He had 90 receptions, 1,300 yards, but the thing that killed everybody else was 17 touchdowns. Now, Jimmy Graham that year had more receptions and only 17 less yards, but had 6 less touchdowns over 16 games. When Gronk was right, Gronk was a monster. And that's kind of what led me to Gronk Smash. Gronk reminds me a lot of Young Frankenstein.
Ah.
Yeah, Gronk reminds me of the Frankenstein from Young Frankenstein, where he's like, fire bad, Gronk Smash.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a beast on the field, just throwing people off of him. He was so big and so fast.
I mean, he's just such a dominant game changer. And the guy, to me, revolutionized the position. I mean, he made this thing, I feel like the players like Travis Kelce, George Kittle, I think they mold themselves after Gronkowski. I mean, they get out there, be huge, rip down the ball, get people out of their way, smash them out of their way. I don't know. He kind of invented the position for tight end, and he made it a viable fantasy position. And now you're starting to see, like I said, a couple little proteges come out of the deal too. And that's awesome. Gronk is, I miss him.
Kittle to me is the closest thing we've seen to Gronk. That there was a catch that he made in the playoffs. It was week 17 against Seattle, on a 3rd and 8, and they threw it to him, and guys are just draped all over him, and he's just running the sideline with guys just hanging all over him to get the first down. And that's the closest thing I've seen to Gronk just throwing that arm with the brace on it out there and just throwing dudes around.
He is also the only member of our list that is hosting a music festival the weekend of the Super Bowl. So clearly,
come to Gronk party.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous of people going, because I'll tell you one thing bros can do is throw a party, and that dude is a bro.
So
come to party.
I really wanted to do a Gronk cruise one year, and my wife would not let me.
Can you imagine the sexual diseases on that cruise?
Listen, I'd only be having sex with one person. That'd be my wife. Okay, fine. I'd be having sex with myself, but that's not the point. Okay, I wouldn't get anything. I just party.
I just feel like it's all over the boat.
I just want to be there for the party.
Just splattered everywhere on the boat.
I don't think that's how it works.
It might work like that on a Gronk cruise.
That science is questionable, sir. I may call that fake news.
As long as listen, Gronk is smashing all over that boat.
Math checks out. I just did the math. It checks out. He's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, science back that up. Jesus.
Science.
I just I couldn't eat at the buffet there.
No.
Right? There's just it's pants optional, I am sure.
Yeah.
That could be good or bad.
It's not good when you're standing in a buffet line. Depending on... Excuse me, sir, can you get that thing out of the croutons?
Hey, all right, let's get back to... I'm perfectly fine going down this rabbit hole, but that's not what we have listeners on.
That's
this
really
podcast
not.
for.
That's really. Yeah, I don't know that Sleeper Wire would appreciate that.
Well,
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So if you do have a problem with your croutons being contaminated, give us a call at 1-800-MIX-A-LOT.
I thought for sure you were going to
moving
give
on.
out the number to the Sunday Blitz. I thought for sure you were going to do that.
Nope. I didn't have that one stored in the memory bank at this moment. 256-56-SLEEP. That's 256-567-5337. So give us a call.
Honestly, if you have issues with that, do us a favor. Tweet our boss at Who's the Prophet.
Yes. That is also an option. But another option would be moving on to our second contestant here on the tight end is right. So before it gets really weird and we talk about how we stir soup, I am going to say that there was debate about this next player, and I'm glad that we kind of went in for the deep dive on the stats because it was well worth it when you look at what he did throughout the decade. When he was hot, he was hot. Unfortunately, when he was not, he was not. And that's Jimmy Graham. So, Mike, I'm going to throw it to you first because we kind of left you out there. How do you feel about Jimmy Graham now that we've kind of looked into the stats a little deeper?
You know, a guy forgets about the first 5 years he had there in New Orleans and just the impact that he had in that team and what he did with Drew Brees and just how amazing he was coming out. I mean, he was just the receiver that Drew Brees never had, and now he has Michael Thomas, which is fantastic. But, I mean, the connection that they used to have, the touchdowns that they used to score, man, that was something else. And you just, I mean, the past few years, you just really haven't seen that Jimmy Graham. You haven't seen that connection. But, I mean, even digging through him in Seattle, he had some pretty formidable years. And like I said, I was saying during the pre-show, like the guy's a Decepticon now. Like he'll have a few good, decent games where he gets out there and he beats Jim, and he is Jimmy Graham. But he seemed to have really slowed down. You know, he doesn't really have that spark that he used to have or that jump that he used to have. And I mean, everybody gets older, everybody fades away a little bit, but he just seems to have done it a little bit more so. But man, when you really look at the numbers and look at how they all kind of break down, he was amazing, man. And you just kind of forget about that because of the past few years. But goodness sakes, him in New Orleans, that was something else.
Yeah, there was a time he was considered arguably the best tight end in fantasy football. Some people would say it was Gronk. Some people would say it was Jimmy Graham. And you could make legitimate cases for both players. It wasn't as crazy as it would be to say it today. Like if Gronk was still playing, hands down, Gronk would be the better tight end than Jimmy Graham. But there was a time where you could make the argument Jimmy Graham was better than Gronk, and it would be a legitimate case. He's got 4 of the 6 years where he reached double digits in touchdowns. As Jason alluded to earlier, in 2013, which was Jimmy Graham's best year, coincidentally was also Gronk's best year. He had more receiving yards than Gronk. He had more receptions than Gronk, but he didn't have as many touchdowns. He's a few
actually. Well, so you're talking about 2011 was Gronk's best year.
Okay,
it was Jimmy Graham's third best year.
What? Yeah, Jimmy Graham's best year was 2013. I'm sorry.
Yeah. All right, so Tony Gonzalez was the first tight end that came from like a basketball background, and they kept talking about him blocking out. And I think Jimmy Graham perfected that a little bit. I always got tired of them talking about it up in the booth, though. Like every game, did you know he was a basketball star? And I'm like, well, yeah, we know it because you say it every time we watched him.
Yeah, every week it's he played basketball, he played basketball, he played basketball. No shit, you told us like the last 8 weeks in a row. And if we're a fan of the Saints or the Seahawks or whatever team he's on, we know that. And if we're fantasy football fans, we probably know that as well.
They've gotten really bad about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and telling us that he was a basketball player and that his parents are Spanish and that they were basketball players, or his dad was a basketball player, and I don't remember what his mom did, but she was a professional athlete. I think that's the modern day equivalent right now. It catches my ire, really grinds my gears.
Grinds them.
We gotta get Booger telling us. Did you know that his parents were professional athletes. And what that means is it's in his blood.
No, what that means is they got paid to play sports.
Yes.
Yeah, that dude's got to go. I'm sorry, Booger, but not. You got to go, bro.
And what that means is I've got to leave the show.
I don't mean to sidetrack this, but did you see where Booger said that they should do a screen on third down, and if they don't get the first down, run to the line and spike the ball? Did you see when he said that?
I did see that. I did see that. I think
Spike
that was
the
a
ball on
playoff
fourth down.
game that they did.
Yes. It was in the
And
first
what that
down.
means is they turn the ball over.
He wants you to spike the ball on fourth down. It's like, what? Come on, man. You're paid how much to do this?
Well, to be fair, it might have been a Patriots game, and they thought they'd give him a fifth down.
They probably would.
That does happen. Roughing the passer.
Yeah. So anyway, let's get back here to Jimmy Graham. Let's try to refocus. Mike, what's your thoughts on Jimmy Graham coming in number 2?
I gave mine at the beginning.
Yeah, he did it already.
We started with Mike.
Thanks for paying attention, George.
But welcome to the show, George.
Hey,
I think you changed your name. I see it here on the screen, and I'm laughing silently. So,
George, you missed out if you didn't hear them. They were provocative.
They were intriguing.
I'm still touching myself right now, actually. So
Enthusiastically.
Yes, very enthusiastically, as my name states. So enthusiastically, we're going to jump into the next contestant on the list. So, Jason, I'm going to throw it to you, and hopefully you're not ready again. Travis Kelce, what say you?
So I'm absolutely ready. Travis Kelce was Mike's number 2 before we browbeat him into saying Jimmy Graham was okay. So Travis Kelce's had so we're talking about Jimmy Graham being great at the first half of the decade. It's been Travis Kelce the back half of the decade. First in 2016, first in 2017, first in 2018, first in 2019. Like, the dude has just done it year after year after year since he hit it big in 2016. And, you know, it's not just with Pat Mahomes, it's also with the human equivalent to a blank piece of paper, Alex Smith at quarterback. Travis Kelce had one of the best years as a tight end in 2018, scoring 296.6 points, 103 receptions, 1,336 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He definitely deserves to be on the list for what he's done over the last 4 years. And, I mean, honestly, he's got multiple years left in him.
Yeah, how old is he now? Because is it just me, or does it feel like he's been in the league for a long time?
He's 30. He's 30.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He's starting to get up there, a little long in the tooth, but he's still dominating at the point of the catch. I mean, he can high point a ball over any defensive back. He's a first down monster. It's almost impossible to defend him. So, Mike, do you think we'll put the over under at 1.5 touchdowns for Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl? What are you taking?
I would say over. Honestly, I think if you're going to get it done at Kansas City, you're going to probably going to have to go through him. I mean, if San Francisco does one thing, they allow something over the middle in the flat spot, and that's kind of where Kelce seems to hang out. I mean, they get you pretty well covered on the wings. They get you pretty well covered deep, and they're pretty hard to run against. So I feel like this could be a huge game for Kelce. I feel like Kansas City can absolutely win this football game as long as him and Mahomes can get connected.
Yeah, Jason, what would you take on that line?
I'll probably take the under. San Francisco, especially with Quan Alexander back, has their linebackers are really stout and very fast. I think they'll be able to hang with Kelce a little bit. I'm gonna take the under there, and I'm gonna say that somebody like Tyreek Hill is gonna have a really good day because Richard Sherman can't run with Tyreek Hill. So he's a great corner, but I don't think he can keep up with him if Tyreek gets by him. It's not the style game Sherman plays. Like, Sherman's a press corner. gets up on you, but if somebody speedy gets by him, I think Tyreek Hill could have a big game.
Jay and George, what are you taking on that line?
I'm going to go under. I think he gets 1 touchdown. I don't think Kelsey's getting 2 touchdowns in this game.
I'm going to go with Mike. I'm taking the over, bro.
I think honestly, I think we'll see a lot, and it's going to kind of be a little gross, but I like it. I think we're going to see a lot of Damian Williams in this game. And it's not going to be rushing the ball. Like, he'll run the ball, that's fine, but I think he's going to be heavily, heavily, heavily involved in the pass game.
I don't want to get too much into the Super Bowl stuff because we're going to do a little deep dive with that next week, but I wanted to just put it out there that me and Mike are going to be right, and you and Jason will be sucking it.
You know what? We could do a bet.
Yeah, we're going to do a raving naked outside bet where you got to take your clothes off and run outside for like 10 minutes in broad daylight in like a dangerous neighborhood.
I live in a dangerous neighborhood. I'm into this.
Let's do it. Are you guys not into this bet?
I literally live in the suburbs. Like, yeah, I don't live around any dangerous neighborhoods.
Go to Mike's house, apparently.
I got dangerous hobbies and shit.
I'm in the burbs.
Mike lives near a Checkers.
You're very close to several checkers.
Hold on, Mike. I need to know, how far are you from a Popeyes?
About probably 3 miles.
That's not bad. I might need to come visit.
Yeah.
Get one of them chicken sandwiches.
I don't know. There's like almost a 50-50 chance whether it's good or bad. Anyway, we won't get into that.
Yeah, I mean, we
Where are
could,
we right
but
now?
that's a different show. And Travis
We're all
Kelce
over the
deserves, a lot of attention. But, like, really, you can't say a whole lot about Travis Kelce that we haven't already gone through.
So out of his 6 years, he's had 4 years of 1,000+ yards. He was over 800 the 2 years before that. He's had double-digit touchdowns once. But 5, 5, 4, 8, 10, and 5. So, but he's like his receptions, like I said, 103 last year, which was huge. This year he only had 97, so only a couple in the 80s. Like, so from a tight end standpoint, the guy's a stud. There's not a lot else you can say besides that, but he's, for 4 years of the decade, he was number one. And it just doesn't get much better than that for a tight end.
So
no, he just hasn't put up the crazy big numbers that that other people have for as long. He's come in a little later in the decade as being like the number one like that, and he really dominated even when Gronk was around. Those two were obviously the number 1 and 2 tight ends in football for a while there. Sorry to cut you off, George, but we gotta continue.
Well, no, I was going to ask you guys a trivia question regarding Kelce. So Jason pointed out that he had 103 receptions in 2018. Can you tell me how many other tight ends have had over 100 receptions in a season?
Steve Carell.
Okay. Recently, this decade.
George Kittle.
1. How many more? And
Jim Carrey.
5.
So there's only been 3 this decade. And one of them you probably won't guess.
Gilbert Grape.
No, not Gilbert Grape.
Zach
It's
Ertz.
George Kittle. It's Zach Ertz. Last year, in 2018 rather, he had 116. And then the other one is Mr. Steady and Mr. Reliable, Jason Witten. He had 110 receptions in 2012.
So I guess we're going to use this as a segue so we continue laterally down some sort of rabbit hole here. You keep trying to sneak Jason Witten onto this list, and I just...
This is the first time I've mentioned Jason Witten.
Yeah, not tonight, though. That's the first time on air you've mentioned Jason Witten.
It's the first time I've mentioned Jason Witten.
You were thinking it.
No, you mentioned him before the show. I was here. Yes, you did. You mentioned that he has the most catches of the decade.
You
I
did?
remember you saying that out loud.
Yeah,
you
that happened.
Oh, I don't remember that. Okay.
You said the most receptions this decade, and he missed a year, and then
And
I
he
guess
missed
you must have read
2018
the
in
same
the move.
article as and then you guys must have read the same article because Rob said the same thing earlier before you logged on.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah, and I almost commented. I think I commented right after that I had read the same article or was thinking that, Jason. So you read my mind. So Jason Witten is going to make his way onto this list as one of the Twitter poll contestants, I guess we'll say. That was a terrible word, but I think we need to change the name to Get Your Shit Together, Rob. So what we're going to do is obviously give you 4 names that we can vote on in this Twitter poll, and they will be the 4th name on the list. So far, starting at the top, we had Rob Gronkowski. Then we moved on to Jimmy Graham at number 2, and number 3 is Travis Kelce. So we already gave Jason Witten as an option, and I also think Jared Cook deserves a nod there as an option, as somebody who's been consistently good throughout the decade. He was never really the top guy, but he stayed in the top group throughout a lot of the years. Somebody want to jump in with some stats on Jared Cook and tell us why he made it here?
I just like how many he played on to get there. Like, I mean, that was one cool thing about Jared Cook is he played on like 5 NFL teams or something like that. Maybe, maybe even more. He's just, and the guy just, every time he goes somewhere, he fits right into the scheme, plays good football, and there they go, So I really have always liked Jared Cook a lot.
yeah.
So the knock for me on Jared Cook is go ahead, George.
No, go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the knock for Jared Cook on me is he's never breached 1,000 yards. He's never had a 200 fantasy point season. He got close in 2018 with 193. He did have 9 touchdowns this past season, but he's never eclipsed 1,000 yards. So he's a solid player, and he's been good for a decade. But when we're talking of like top 4 tight ends, top 5 tight ends, he doesn't make it there for me.
So one of the reasons he's up there for me is he's one of 6 tight ends to have over 6,000 receiving yards this decade. So when you're talking about the all-decade team, he's definitely within the top 6 as far as receiving yards. So I give him the nod for that. As far as touchdown totals, he doesn't have very many fewer touchdowns than Travis Kelce does this decade. So like Travis Kelce, we talked about how consistent he was with his touchdowns. He's got 37 touchdowns this decade. But you turn around and look at Jared Cook this decade, he's got 34. So Travis Kelce's got 3 touchdowns less than him this decade.
Well, how many seasons for
1.
each, George?
There's
1 season difference? I think you're wrong.
Let me see.
Travis Kelce started in 2014, so we can go there. When did
Travis
Cook?
Kelce? Well, Travis Kelce's first season in the NFL was 2013.
Did he play a game? Because he doesn't have any stats.
He played 1 game. 1 game that year.
Okay, so how about?
So even if you want to go, if you want to start 2014, that's fine.
How many seasons has Cook played? Because you're talking about
he's played the whole decade, and we'll take 8 touchdowns off of him. So now you're talking, 11 touchdowns less than Kelce for the decade. I mean, he's
played,
still there.
But he's played 3 more years. I mean,
I took
with
those
11
off.
less touchdowns.
Yeah. If you put them equal, 11. That's why we got Travis Kelce automatic on the list and Jared Cook in the discussion. Like I'm not saying Jared Cook is better than Travis Kelce. I'm saying he deserves to be in the Twitter poll of best tight ends this decade.
I'm just saying that before we get to Travis Kelce, we really need to talk about Greg Olsen.
And we could talk about Greg Olsen. He's another one that deserves to be on the list.
Because Greg Olsen stopped 1,000 yards 3 times, broken the 200 point barrier. Came close 3 times. Came close the 4th time with 190, and came close the 5th time with 183. So he's had 3 seasons of 1,000 plus. He's had 2 seasons of 800 plus just this decade. Now he's fallen off towards the end of his career here because of injuries. But when Greg Olson was on, he was on and one of the best. So like, I know we're adding multiple names, but man, we got to put some order on it, and I think Greg Olson over Cook. Does anybody disagree?
No, I would not disagree.
No, I think that's correct.
Rob?
Zach Ertz deserves to be on this list, though, too.
Zach Ertz, and I also think Antonio Gates does as well.
Antonio Gates might, too. Yep, I've been thinking that as well.
So basically, you guys think Jared Cook is trash.
No, I don't.
Not trash. He deserves to be on this list. I just think he deserves to be there after maybe Greg Olson, potentially Zach Ertz. We have to talk Zach Ertz first, though.
We are going to get our final count to 4. I want to keep this down to 4 guys. So if we're going to talk Zach Ertz, then we got to remove somebody. So if we've got, I definitely think Greg Olson goes on there. I definitely think
Witten.
Yeah, Jason Witten and Greg Olson, 2 old men who can still play the game. They both go on there. Now, if we put Zach Ertz on there, then we have one other spot open. Does that go to Delanie Walker? Does that go to Jared Cook? Who else is deserved of our last spot?
I would put Jared Cook above Delanie Walker.
All right. Does anybody have a name for number 4?
Would you do Antonio Brown?
Antonio Brown, no.
Antonio Gates, excuse me. Antonio Gates.
Antonio Gates, yes.
I think I like Antonio Gates there, too.
I think I like Gates there. So he doesn't have the yardage, but definitely has the touchdowns, and he's played the whole decade.
And he was definitely dominant for a couple of those years. I mean, he's a huge red zone target to help Phillip Rivers out quite a bit in his career.
He does have a 200-point fantasy finish. He's got 2 seasons this decade with double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah, and
Antonio Gates.
He's got 57 touchdowns on the decade.
Hell yeah. That's a good number. And to put that in perspective, Jimmy Graham had 74 and Gronk had, was it 77?
Gronk had 79.
All right. So 74 and 79. So that's a lot of freaking touchdowns, man, to be scoring for tight ends. And that's one of the things that they give you more than other positions. It's never really a huge yardage outside of a few outliers. Obviously, Zach Ertz, George Kittle recently, Travis Kelce recently, and Gronk did it massively throughout a huge part of the decade. So to wrap up what we have here, we have Gronk as number 1. Jason, who's our number 2?
Jimmy Graham.
George, number 3?
Travis Kelce.
Michael, give us one of the names for the Twitter poll.
Jason Witten.
There we go. Antonio Gates. Jason?
Greg Olson.
George?
I forget who we had the last one.
Zach Ertz.
Zach Ertz. I wasn't sure who the last one was.
That was like
we talked about so many names.
So I just was looking up Antonio Gates. Dude was amazing. He finished 3rd this decade amongst tight ends and touchdowns, 7th in catches, and 8th in yards. So I feel like we definitely justified adding Antonio Gates to that list.
Yeah, for sure. He definitely needs to be there. And I'm glad we kind of found in a position group that has been fairly desolate for a while. We found some pretty big names and actually had some people that we had to have discussions about. So, Jared Cook, you're out. Jason said you're trash.
Yeah, Jason hates you.
So
go eat the croutons.
Yeah, he's offering you a sick meal, sir. But that's going to wrap it up for us this week, guys. Make sure you tune in next week where we go over the winner of all the Twitter polls for each position group. We'll also recap the team, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl as well. Thank you for listening, guys. I'm sure hopefully you had as much fun as we did, because that was a lot of fun recording. That may be a little hard to keep track of when you listen to, but sit back, relax, and have a good time with us. And hopefully we'll see you again next week, guys. George, tell us where we can find you on Twitter, brother.
You can find me on Twitter at BFTGPod.
You can find me at BFTGJason.
And you can find me at Dirty Jobs 21.
And you can find me at Esorbor1. That's Rob Rose backwards. ESORBOR1. Thank you very much.
You can also find Rob at the buffet on the Grunt Cruise.
I will be your pantless waiter. Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. Eat my croutons. Good night.